The millionaire's baby kicked and punched all the nannies, but kissed the black cleaning lady. And it was precisely that kiss that changed everything and exposed a truth that Manhattan's elite never expected to face. That woman can't stay here. Just look at her. Victoria Pemberton's shrill voice echoed through the penthouse's marble hall. She'll contaminate my grandson with who knows what. Keisha Williams, 28, stood motionless in the center of the room, gently cradling little Harrison in her arms. The 18-month-old baby, known for his violence against all previous nannies, slept peacefully against her chest, his fists that had once punched now relaxed on her blue uniform blouse. "Grandma's right, Daddy." Jennifer Pemberton crossed her arms, her diamonds sparkling in the light of the crystal chandeliers. "You can't let just anyone from cleaning hold Harrison. We have to maintain standards." The Upper East Side apartment was buzzing with tension. 5 specialized nannies had been fired in the last month after being kicked, bitten, and assaulted by little Harrison. The boy violently rejected any attempt at care, turning the life of his widowed father, real estate mogul David Cross, into a daily nightmare. But there was Keisha, the night cleaner who had been called in for an emergency during the day, holding that impossible child as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She must have some dirty trick. Victoria whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "These people always have questionable methods of dealing with children." Keisha felt every word like a blade, but she remained calm. Raised in the Bronx, the daughter of a nurse and a mechanic, she was familiar with this kind of venom disguised as maternal concern. Her eyes met those of David Cross, who was watching the scene with an indecipherable expression. "Maybe I'd better go," Keisha said softly, beginning to transfer Harrison to the crib. The baby immediately began to cry and reached his little arms toward her, refusing to let go of her shirt. It was the first time in months that Harrison had shown affection for anyone. Impressive. Dr. Martinez, the family pediatrician, watched in fascination. "In my 20-year career, I've never seen such an immediate and positive reaction. It's as if he recognizes something in her." "Recognizes what?" Victoria retorted dismissively. "She's just a cleaning lady." But Keisha saw something in Dr. Martinez's eyes that the others missed. A scientific curiosity mixed with respect. He had realized what she had always known: children don't lie. They sense people's genuine energy in a way that adults, corrupted by prejudice, never can. "Mr. Cross," Keisha said calmly, "may I make a suggestion?" David nodded, intrigued by the confidence in her voice. "Let me stay with Harrison for an hour. If he's okay, consider that maybe the problem isn't with the nannies, but with whoever is choosing them." The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria paled, Jennifer opened her mouth in shock, and David Cross realized he had just witnessed the first act of a play far more complex than he had imagined. While everyone processed her meaningful words, Keisha maintained the serenity that only exists in those who have weathered far worse storms and lived to tell the tale. Her eyes revealed a quiet strength that made some of those present realize they had seriously underestimated this woman. If you're wondering how a simple cleaning lady had the courage to challenge Manhattan's elite, be sure to subscribe to the channel, because what happened in the next few hours would forever change the lives of everyone in that room. The hour Keisha had proposed turned into a silent battle of wills. Victoria Pemberton couldn't accept that her blue-blooded grandson showed affection for a working-class black woman, while Jennifer circled the room like a predator, looking for any excuse to expel that intruder from her sacred territory. "David, you can't be seriously considering this," Victoria whispered loudly, her eyes fixed on Keisha, who was playing on the floor with Harrison. "Imagine what the neighbors will think. What they'll say at the club." Keisha pretended not to hear, but every word was like salt on a wound that had been bleeding for years. Since she was a child in the Bronx, she had learned that her presence bothered people like Victoria. Her mother, a night shift nurse, always said, "Honey, they'll try to make you believe you don't belong anywhere. Prove them wrong." And Keisha had proven them wrong. She graduated with a degree in child development on a full scholarship, worked in daycare centers in upscale neighborhoods where mothers praised her privately but never invited her to social gatherings. When her mother developed diabetes and lost her health insurance, Keisha took on night cleaning jobs to pay for the expensive medication. "Dad, look how calm Harrison is." Jennifer pointed with disdain. She must have given him something. "These people know methods that we don't know about." David Cross watched the scene with growing discomfort. For the first time in months, his son was playing normally, laughing, even eating the baby food Keisha offered him with infinite patience. But the family pressure was intense. "Maybe we should do some tests on the boy," Victoria suggested, her voice dripping with venom, "to make sure he hasn't been exposed to anything inappropriate." Keisha felt a cold anger rise in her chest, but she kept her face calm. At 28, she had faced subtle and explicit prejudice in every job, every interview, every social interaction. She knew that reacting emotionally would only confirm the stereotypes they carried. "Mr. Cross," Keisha said calmly, still playing with Harrison, "may I ask how many specialized nannies have tried to care for Harrison in the last few months?" 15. David replied, surprised at his own candor. "All with excellent references and training in pedagogy." "And what was the profile of these nannies?" Keisha continued, her voice soft but laden with intent. David hesitated. Victoria and Jennifer exchanged nervous glances, realizing where the conversation was going. "Well, they were all," David stopped, realizing the trap. "White, wealthy, from the same social class as you," Keisha finished, standing up with Harrison in her arms. "Interesting how an 18-month-old child can distinguish authenticity from pretense, don't you think?" The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer opened and closed her mouth several times, Victoria blushed with indignation, and Dr. Martinez watched Keisha with growing admiration. "How dare you," Victoria began, but was interrupted by David's phone. "Excuse me, I have to take this. It's the office." David left the room, leaving the women in palpable tension. Victoria took advantage of her son's absence to attack. "Listen here, you. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I know people like you very well. You see a rich family and think you can take advantage of them." "People like me?" Keisha repeated, her voice dangerously calm. "Don't play dumb. Ambitious, manipulative, always looking for a way to get ahead at the expense of others." Jennifer joined the attack. "You're probably already planning how to seduce David to ensure an easy life." Keisha smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, but carried years of experience dealing with people just like them. "You know, you're right about one thing," she said softly, rocking Harrison, who was starting to get sleepy. "I am ambitious. Very ambitious. But not in the way you think." At that moment, David returned, noticing the tension in the air. "Did something happen?" "We were just getting to know our guest better," Victoria smiled falsely. Keisha looked directly at David. "Mr. Cross, Harrison fell asleep in my arms. For the first time in weeks, according to Dr. Martinez. May I make a suggestion?" David nodded, intrigued. "Hire me as a temporary nanny. 1 week. If Harrison doesn't adjust completely, I'll leave without causing any trouble. But if he does adjust," she paused, her eyes meeting Victoria's. "Perhaps it's time to ask why 15 qualified women failed where a simple cleaning lady succeeded." The provocation was clear, clever, and impossible to ignore. Victoria paled, realizing she had seriously underestimated this woman. Jennifer bit her lip, feeling the control of the situation slipping from her grasp. Dr. Martinez broke the silence. "Mr. Cross, from a medical standpoint, Harrison's well-being must be the priority. And in my 20 years of experience, I have never seen such a positive and immediate response." David looked at his son sleeping peacefully in Keisha's arms, then at the faces of Victoria and Jennifer, masking their despair. For the first time in months, he felt there was hope. 1 week, he said finally. but with a few conditions. Victoria and Jennifer exchanged panicked glances. What they didn't know was that Keisha had spent the last 4 months observing this family during her night shifts, studying their dynamics, learning their secrets, and above all, realizing that behind all that wealth and arrogance, there was a deep dysfunction that she was more than prepared to face. While the two women tried to process how a simple cleaning lady had managed to turn the tables in a matter of hours, Keisha maintained the serenity that only exists in those who know exactly what the next move will be, and all the moves that follow. Keisha's first week as a temporary nanny was a masterclass in psychological warfare disguised as courtesy. Victoria and Jennifer had decided to make her life a living hell with 1,000 little cuts, each carefully calculated to appear accidental or justifiable. Oh, what a shame. I forgot to mention that Harrison is allergic to peanuts. Jennifer commented casually on the third day, after Keisha had already prepared the snack. Good thing I noticed before he ate it. Imagine if something had happened. Keisha smiled serenely as she wiped the table. How lucky. I'll write down all his allergies. By the way, from what I saw in the medical records on the refrigerator, he's only allergic to seafood. Did I read it wrong? The silence that followed was delightful. Jennifer didn't expect a simple cleaning lady to know how to read medical records or to have realized that the information about peanuts was a blatant lie. But Keisha knew much more than they imagined. During 4 months of night shifts, she had observed, listened, and learned. She knew that Victoria was taking antidepressants behind David's back. That Jennifer was secretly up to her neck in debt because of her online gambling addiction. That David had inherited the company, but Victoria controlled 40% of the shares through a trust fund that she manipulated as an emotional weapon. More importantly, he knew that both were desperate to keep Harrison isolated from inappropriate influences because they had very specific plans for the child's future and the family's money. Dr. Martinez called today, Victoria announced over dinner, her voice dripping with false concern. He wants to talk to you about some special protocols for traumatized children. David looked surprised. Traumatized? Harrison has never been better. Well, you know how it is, Jennifer interjected. Young children can develop inappropriate dependencies when exposed to caregivers who use unconventional methods. Keisha continued cutting vegetables for Harrison, but her ears pricked up. She had known Dr. Martinez for 3 weeks now, and the doctor had been nothing but professional and respectful. That conversation smacked of a setup. Mr. Cross, Keisha said calmly, may I suggest that we record this conversation with Dr. Martinez? For medical documentation purposes, of course. I want to be sure I understand any special protocols correctly. Victoria paled. Record? That's unnecessary. Actually, it's an excellent idea, David agreed. Documentation is always important when it comes to Harrison's health. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Keisha made a phone call she had been planning for days. Professor Williams? This is Keisha, your former student from the Child Development course. I need a favor. No, rather, I need your professional expertise. Dr. James Williams had been her professor and mentor in college, a 55-year-old black man who had earned academic respect after decades of facing the same prejudices that Keisha knew well. He was now an independent consultant in child custody cases for family courts. Keisha, it's good to hear your voice. How are you? I hear you're working as a nanny. It's more complicated than that, Professor. I'm in a situation where a wealthy family is trying to sabotage me professionally, and I suspect they're willing to use an innocent child as a weapon. I need someone who understands both child psychology and family manipulation. Tell me everything. For 40 minutes, Keisha explained every detail: Jennifer's lies about allergies, Victoria's poisonous insinuations, the sudden concern about special protocols, and most importantly, her suspicion that both were trying to create a narrative that she was inadequate or dangerous. Keisha, you're dealing with something very serious. This pattern of behavior suggests that they are building a case to remove you from the child. Worse, they may be trying to question David's parenting skills as well. How so? If they can prove that David made an irresponsible decision in hiring you, it could be used against him in future family disputes. Victoria, as a grandmother, could claim that he is not fit to make decisions about the child's welfare. Keisha felt a chill run down her spine. Professor, I need your help to document everything correctly. And I need an independent second medical opinion on Harrison. I can be there tomorrow. But Keisha, if my suspicions are correct, you're not just fighting for your job. You're fighting for this child's future. The next morning, Dr. Martinez arrived for the protocol discussion, accompanied by Victoria and Jennifer, who insisted on being present. David was in the office, and Keisha had offered to take Harrison to the park. Miss Williams, Dr. Martinez began, clearly uncomfortable, I've received some concerns about non-traditional methods being used with Harrison. What kind of concerns? Keisha asked, discreetly activating the recorder on her cell phone. Victoria leaned forward. Well, doctor, we've noticed that Harrison has developed a very intense dependence on Keisha. Could this be a sign of emotional manipulation? Emotional manipulation? Dr. Martinez frowned. Ms. Pemberton, Harrison is demonstrating the first healthy bond he has had since his mother's death. That is extremely positive. Jennifer tried a different approach. But doctor, people from her background sometimes use techniques that we don't understand. Perhaps we should investigate further. Dr. Martinez was visibly uncomfortable. Ms. Cross, may I ask what techniques exactly you are referring to? The silence that followed was revealing. Jennifer and Victoria exchanged nervous glances, realizing they had exposed themselves too much. Well, Victoria tried to recover. We just want to make sure Harrison is receiving care, appropriate, for a child of his social standing. That's when Dr. Martinez finally understood what was going on. His eyes met Keisha's, and she saw in them a mixture of anger and determination that reassured her. Ladies, he said coldly, in 20 years of medical practice, I have never seen a child respond so positively to a caregiver. Keisha has training in child development, something that, frankly, none of the previous nannies had. If there are any real concerns about Harrison's well-being, I suggest you document those concerns specifically in writing, with concrete evidence. Victoria blushed. Doctor, you don't understand the social situation. I understand the situation perfectly, Dr. Martinez interrupted. And as Harrison's physician, my official recommendation is that Keisha continue as his primary caregiver. In fact, I will document this in the child's medical records. After he left, Victoria and Jennifer were silent. Keisha continued to play with Harrison as if nothing had happened, but internally, she felt the first victory in a war that had only just begun. That night, she received a message from Professor Williams. I've arrived in town. I need to show you some things I've discovered about the Cross family. Information that has changed everything. As she watched Harrison sleep peacefully, Keisha smiled. During 4 months of night shifts, she had collected much more than dust from the furniture. She had collected secrets. And now, with powerful allies at her side, she was ready to show Victoria and Jennifer that they had chosen the wrong adversary. What they didn't know was that the real battle hadn't even begun yet, and that Keisha had spent months preparing for a war they didn't even know was being waged. The meeting Professor Williams had arranged with Keisha completely changed the course of the silent war unfolding in the Upper East Side penthouse. Sitting in an inconspicuous cafe in Brooklyn, he opened a folder filled with documents that would make Victoria and Jennifer regret every poisonous word they had directed at her. Keisha, what I've discovered about the Cross family goes far beyond prejudice. Professor Williams slid photographs and documents across the table. Victoria Pemberton isn't just a controlling mother-in-law. She is systematically manipulating David's legal situation to take full control of Harrison's inheritance. The evidence was devastating. Victoria had hired private investigators to document every inappropriate decision David made as a father, building a case to question his parental competence. Jennifer, meanwhile, was secretly working with lawyers to establish a trust fund that she would control on Harrison's behalf, effectively stealing the child's inheritance. "Look at this," Professor Williams pointed to a series of printed emails. "Victoria has been corresponding with child psychologists, trying to find one who will diagnose Harrison with some disorder that would justify removing him from David. And Jennifer, well, she's much worse than we imagined." Bank records showed that Jennifer had embezzled nearly $200,000 from joint family accounts to cover her online gambling debts. Worse still, she was using Harrison's name as collateral on loans that David knew nothing about. "Professor, that's criminal." "Exactly. And there's more." He showed photographs of Jennifer entering underground gambling dens. "She owes almost $500,000 to loan sharks. She's desperate." Keisha felt all the pieces falling into place. "That's why they want me out of the picture. It's not just prejudice, I'm a threat to their plan. If David realizes that Harrison thrives under my care, he'll never question his own competence as a father." "Exactly. And there's a family meeting scheduled for tomorrow, where they plan to present a psychological report on Harrison and recommend that David accept help to better manage finances and decisions about the child." That night, Keisha worked until dawn. But she wasn't cleaning, she was organizing the most meticulous revenge Victoria and Jennifer could ever imagine. During 4 months of night work, she had collected much more than dust. There were photographs of Victoria taking antidepressants she hid from David, while judging others for emotional instability. Recordings of phone conversations where Jennifer lied about debts. And most importantly, evidence that both had tried to deliberately sabotage Harrison's relationship with previous nannies. "Dr. Martinez," Keisha called the next morning. "I need you to come to the family meeting today. As Harrison's doctor, you have a legal right to be present when they discuss his well-being." "Of course, but why?" "Because today Victoria and Jennifer are going to find out that they seriously underestimated the wrong woman." The meeting was scheduled for 3 p.m. at the family's law office. David arrived nervous, not understanding why his mother had insisted on such a formal meeting. Victoria and Jennifer entered beaming, carrying organized folders with their evidence against David and their concerns about Keisha. "David dear," Victoria began in her honeyed voice, "we are concerned about some decisions you have been making lately, especially regarding Harrison's care." Jennifer opened her folder. "We hired Dr. Peterson, a renowned child psychologist, to assess the situation. He has some important recommendations about necessary changes." Dr. Peterson, a 60-year-old man with gold-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat. "Mr. Cross, based on family reports, I believe Harrison is developing inappropriate attachments that could harm his future social development." "Inappropriate attachments?" David frowned. "To people who do not share the same cultural and social values as the family," Dr. Peterson continued, avoiding saying directly that he was referring to Keisha. "I recommend an immediate change of caregivers, as well as an assessment of your decision-making ability as a single parent." The ensuing silence was broken by a knock at the door. Dr. Martinez entered, followed by Professor Williams and, to everyone's shock, Keisha. "Sorry to interrupt," Dr. Martinez said coldly. "But as Harrison's attending physician, I believe you are about to make a terrible mistake." Victoria paled. What does that mean?" Keisha opened her own folder, much thicker than Jennifer's. "It means that during 4 months of working in this house, I have collected enough evidence to bury you both legally, financially, and socially." Professor Williams introduced himself formally. "I am Dr. James Williams, consultant on child custody cases for the New York Family Court. And after reviewing the evidence collected by Ms. Keisha, I can say that we are dealing with a clear case of family manipulation and misappropriation." Jennifer began to sweat visibly. "Evidence? What evidence?" Keisha smiled, that serene smile that Victoria and Jennifer had seen before, but now finally understood its true meaning. Well, let's start with your emails, Victoria. Keisha placed printouts on the table. Specifically, your attempts to bribe Dr. Peterson to provide a false diagnosis about Harrison. Dr. Peterson blushed. This is a misunderstanding. No, it's not, Professor Williams interrupted. We have phone recordings where you discuss modifying your report in exchange for donations to your private clinic. Victoria tried to stand up, but Keisha continued relentlessly. And Jennifer, did you really think I wouldn't notice the bank statements you left on the office desk during my nightly cleanings? David stared at his ex-sister-in-law in shock. Jennifer, what statements? Keisha slid documents across the table. Loans of $80,000 using Harrison as collateral. Unauthorized transfers from family accounts. And my favorites, she paused dramatically, photographs of you entering illegal gambling establishments in Queens. The silence in the room was deafening. Jennifer was pale as a ghost, Victoria was visibly shaking, and Dr. Peterson was discreetly trying to leave the room. But the best part, Keisha continued, is the recordings of the two of you plotting how to sabotage me. Including Jennifer's attempt to plant cocaine in my purse last week. Cocaine. David exploded. Jennifer, are you crazy? Professor Williams picked up a digital recorder. Mr. Cross, would you like to hear exactly what your mother and sister-in-law have been saying about Keisha and you over the past few months? For the next 20 minutes, the room was filled with the voices of Victoria and Jennifer distilling prejudice, planning sabotage, and discussing how to manipulate David into taking control of his inheritance. Every word was a stab at the dignity they tried to maintain. My God, David murmured, his face in his hands. I trusted you. Victoria attempted one last desperate defense. David, you don't understand. That woman planned all of this. She manipulated us. Keisha stood up calmly. You're right about one thing. I planned all of this. But not to harm David or Harrison, to protect them from you. She turned to David. Mr. Cross, for 4 months I watched as your mother and sister-in-law systematically tried to undermine your confidence as a father. I saw how they rejected any nanny who truly connected with Harrison, because that would prove that the problem wasn't with him, but with the toxic environment they had created. Dr. Martinez spoke up. David, from a medical standpoint, Keisha is right. Harrison has no behavioral disorder. He was reacting to the emotional stress caused by the constant manipulation he was witnessing. Professor Williams placed one last document on the table. And legally, you two have committed serious crimes. Embezzlement, attempted fraud, bribery, and conspiracy to harm the welfare of a child. Jennifer collapsed into a chair, crying. Victoria, realizing she had lost everything, attempted one last venomous attack. Do you think you've won anything? A slum dweller and some professor against the New York elite? It won't end like this. Keisha smiled again, taking her cell phone out of her pocket. You know, Victoria, during our conversation here, I broadcast everything live on Manhattan Social Justice's Instagram. We have over 50,000 people watching right now, including journalists from 3 major television networks. Victoria's face turned to pure horror. You didn't do that. Yes, I did. And do you know what the most liked comment has been so far? Rich racists finally being exposed for what they really are. At that moment, the room filled with the sound of cell phone notifications. The scandal was exploding on social media in real time. In a matter of hours, Victoria Pemberton and Jennifer Cross became national symbols of privilege, prejudice, and family corruption. David looked at Keisha with a mixture of shock and admiration. You documented all of this to protect me? To protect Harrison, Keisha corrected. Children deserve to grow up in environments free from manipulation and hatred. And you deserve to know the truth about the people you trusted. As Victoria and Jennifer left the room devastated, facing flashes from paparazzi already crowding the building's entrance, Keisha remained serene. In a matter of hours, she had turned two powerful women into social outcasts, using nothing but the truth and intelligence they had underestimated. But the real revolution was just beginning, because what no one in the room knew was that Keisha had one last move prepared, a move that would turn her personal victory into systemic change that would affect families like Harrison's for generations to come. 6 months later, the scandal had completely destroyed Victoria and Jennifer. Victoria lost all her positions on elite charity boards and was expelled from the exclusive club where she had reigned for decades. Jennifer, sued for embezzlement, filed for bankruptcy and was serving house arrest. David had promoted Keisha from nanny to Harrison's educational director, with a 6-figure salary and a share in the company's profits. She used her new position to create a national scholarship program for single mothers to study child development. Buna Mama. Harrison, now 2.5, ran around the house speaking perfectly, his emotional and intellectual development surprising all the experts. Keisha turned her experience into a digital platform that has helped thousands of working women document discrimination in the workplace. Her lectures on smart revenge filled university auditoriums. Dr. Martinez became a consultant for the anti-discrimination program Keisha created, and Professor Williams was hired as the director of diversity at David's company. Victoria, isolated and bitter, watched from afar as the simple cleaning lady she tried to destroy became one of the most respected voices in social justice in New York. Keisha's true revenge was not just to expose prejudice, it was to prove that intelligence and dignity always win out over arrogance and privilege. She turned her pain into purpose, her humiliation into power. Harrison grew up in a home filled with genuine love, free from the poisons that had nearly poisoned him. David learned that true privilege is recognizing talent where others see only prejudice. The lesson was clear: those who underestimate the strength of a determined woman do not know the devastating power of justice served with intelligence. If this story of overcoming adversity touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that the best revenge is success your enemies could never imagine.